All alien species learned the same lesson about Deathworld in the jungle. Cadet's Journey, HFY, Sci-Fi. The thick, humid air of the jungle clung to the cadets' skin as they trudged through the dense underbrush. Their boots sank into the rich, dark soil with every step, and the chorus of alien insects and creatures echoed around them. This was no ordinary training ground. This was Deathworld, a planet known throughout the galaxy for its brutal environment. One that could tear the unprepared to pieces within minutes. But to these cadets, it was a test. "Keep moving," barked Sergeant Kale, his voice cutting through the oppressive silence. The tall Zarnak, his armored exoskeleton reflecting the few rays of sunlight that broke through the canopy, moved effortlessly through the jungle, his multiple eyes scanning the horizon. "You'll learn more than tactics here. You'll learn what survival really means." The cadets, a diverse group of species, were from various planets. There was Talia, a human, her short hair matted to her forehead with sweat. Grith, a massive, four-armed Krolnian with tough, leathery skin. And Jorith, a sleek, antennaed Zithian, whose purple-blue skin shimmered in the faint light. All of them had faced intense training in their respective academies, but nothing could have prepared them for the brutal lessons this jungle would teach them. The jungle on Deathworld was alive in every sense. The flora had evolved to be as dangerous as the fauna. Carnivorous plants reached out to grab anything that moved too close, their sharp tendrils like coiled serpents waiting to strike. The creatures here were vicious, too, stealthy predators that lurked just out of sight, venomous beasts that struck without warning, and relentless scavengers that attacked in packs. Talia wiped the sweat from her brow, glancing at Grith. His deep red eyes, though intense, betrayed little emotion, but she knew that underneath the stoic exterior, the Krolnian was struggling with the jungle's oppressive weight. They all were. It wasn't just the physical challenge, it was the mental and emotional toll of this world, a world where every step could be their last. "We're losing time," Jorith said in a soft, melodic voice, his antennas twitching as he surveyed their surroundings. "We need to make the extraction point before nightfall, or the creatures will become more aggressive." "Keep moving," Sergeant Kale repeated, glancing over his shoulder. In Deathworld, hesitation kills. Move as a unit, think as a unit. As they pressed forward, they came across a narrow, winding river, its waters dark and swift. Grith grunted, his forearms flexing as he motioned for the others to stop. He crouched low, sniffing the air. "Something's wrong," he rumbled. Sergeant Kale's eyes narrowed. "Stay alert. We're crossing." The cadets hesitated, but they trusted their sergeant. Talia and Grith took the lead, the massive Krolnian moving with surprising grace despite his size. The others followed, their movements synchronized, a testament to the training they had endured. As they neared the water's edge, a low growl sounded from behind them. It was too late. A hulking, reptilian creature burst from the underbrush, its massive jaws snapping shut inches from Grith's back. The Krolnian roared in anger, spinning to face the beast. The cadets had no choice but to fight. Talia's pulse quickened as she drew her blaster. The beast, a large predator with scales like iron, was almost upon them. Jorith fired first, his weapon unleashing a concentrated energy blast that sent the creature stumbling back. But it wasn't enough. "Move," Sergeant Kale shouted. "Get to the water. It's a scavenger, they never fight alone." The jungle erupted into chaos as more of the predators, seemingly emerging from the shadows, joined the fray. The cadets fought with all they had, but the creatures were relentless, their primal instincts driving them to overwhelm their prey. Grith slammed his massive fist into one of the creatures, sending it crashing to the ground. Jorith leapt onto a nearby tree, firing down on another beast, while Talia provided cover, her blaster shots lighting up the darkening jungle. But it wasn't enough. The predators were everywhere, closing in. The cadets were trapped. "We have to get out. Now," Talia shouted, panic creeping into her voice. But even as she spoke, the reality of their situation set in. They were in the heart of Deathworld, surrounded by creatures that had adapted for centuries to kill without mercy. Sergeant Kale's voice cut through the chaos. "This isn't about survival of the fittest. It's about adaptability. You will learn what Deathworld teaches us. Only those who evolve can endure." In that moment, Talia understood. It wasn't the strongest that survived. It was those who could adapt to the ever-changing environment. They had to outthink the predators, outlast the threats, and move as one cohesive unit. The jungle didn't care about size or strength. It only cared about survival. The cadets made a desperate dash for the river, the creatures hot on their heels. They plunged into the fast-moving water, using the current to their advantage. Sergeant Kale led them downriver, shouting commands, his voice firm and unwavering. They didn't stop to look back. They couldn't. Hours later, they emerged on the other side of the jungle, exhausted but alive. The predators had given up their chase. The jungle had proven its lesson. Survival here was not just about power. It was about learning and adapting to the ever-changing dangers around them. As they gathered themselves, Sergeant Kale turned to face them. "Congratulations, cadets. You've passed your first test." Talia looked around at her fellow cadets. Grith, though bruised and battered, was standing tall. Jorith, his antennae twitching in a way she had come to recognize as satisfaction, gave her a nod. They had survived. And they had learned something deeper than just tactics. They had learned that no matter how different they were, no matter their species, their homeworld, their strengths, in the face of Deathworld, they were all the same. Adaptation was the key to survival. And now, they would carry that lesson with them forever. All alien species learned the same lesson about Deathworld in the jungle. Cadet's journey, HFY Sci-Fi, continued. The sun dipped beneath the jungle canopy, casting long shadows over the muddy riverbank as the cadets gathered in a circle, exhausted but united in the shared experience of their harrowing test. Sergeant Kale stood at the center, his many eyes flicking from one cadet to another. His expression, though stoic, revealed something deeper beneath the surface, a rare hint of approval. "Well done," Kale said, his voice steady as he looked each cadet in the eye. "You survived, but surviving isn't enough. You must now understand the deeper lesson of this place. This jungle doesn't care who you are, whether you're from the shining spires of the Vrenix, or the harsh deserts of Quarter 9. This world doesn't differentiate, it adapts. And so must you. If you think you can rely solely on strength or technology to survive here, you'll die." Deathworld teaches the greatest lesson of all, humility. Talia, still catching her breath, glanced at Grith, whose massive form was now slightly hunched with fatigue. Despite the struggle, she saw something in his eyes, a shift, a recognition that even a species as powerful as his could be humbled by a world so indifferent to survival. Beside him, Jorith's slender frame seemed unscathed, but the Zithian's usual calm demeanor was replaced by a quiet intensity. The jungle had left its mark on all of them. "What do you mean, humility?" Grith asked, his deep voice rough but filled with genuine curiosity. "We fought, we killed, we survived." Kale nodded, taking a moment before answering. "Yes, but the jungle doesn't care about your strength. It doesn't care about your weaponry, or your physiology. The predators you fought today are not the most dangerous thing about this world. The jungle is. The environment itself, the very ground beneath your feet is hostile, and if you underestimate it, it will devour you." He paused, his many eyes narrowing slightly. "If you don't learn to adapt to the world, not just fight it, you won't survive." Talia's mind raced. This wasn't just about brute force or advanced technology. It was about changing how they interacted with the environment, understanding it on a deeper level. She'd seen it today, when the predators attacked. The most effective strategy had been to use their surroundings against the beasts, not just fight them head-on. Adaptability, Jorith mused, speaking the word with the soft cadence of his species. "You mean we must think like the world around us, blend in with it, become one with it?" "Exactly," Kale affirmed. "This is not a lesson for your species alone. It's a universal truth. Whether you're a human, a Krolnian, or a Zithian, you all must learn that survival is not guaranteed by strength alone. It is earned by your ability to adapt, to grow, to learn and change in response to your environment." The cadets stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the words sinking in. Talia couldn't help but feel a pang of something she hadn't expected. There was something deeply humbling about the idea that no matter how advanced their technology or powerful their species, there would always be a limit. Deathworld would always be a reminder that, in the end, they were not invincible, only adaptable. "But Sergeant," Talia spoke up, her voice steady now, "we didn't just rely on the environment, we relied on each other, too. You said we should move as a unit. Isn't that part of the lesson?" Kale's eyes softened, a rare glimpse of approval in his expression. "Correct, Cadet Talia. Adaptation doesn't just mean understanding the jungle. It means understanding each other, too. In this world, you are only as strong as the unit you form. Alone, each of you would have fallen. But together, you survived. Talia felt a surge of pride, not just for herself, but for her fellow cadets. They had been from different corners of the galaxy, with species as diverse as the stars themselves. But here, on Deathworld, they had fought as one, a team bound by the same lesson, survival. Kale's voice cut through her thoughts. We'll be here a while longer. You've learned one lesson today, but there are many more to come. This world will continue to test you, push you, break you. It will show you just how far your species can go before the jungle grinds you into dust. He paused, his gaze intense. You've passed this test, but that doesn't mean you're ready. No one is ever truly ready for Deathworld. Talia's pulse quickened at the thought. She had expected this test to be the end of their trial, a final, grueling assessment. But Kale's words suggested something more. They had only just begun. What happens next? Grith asked, his massive frame looming over the others. His voice, though gruff, had an edge of uncertainty. Do we head back to base? No, Kale replied firmly. You stay, and you learn. This world will never stop testing you, and neither will I. The true test begins now. You will become the jungle, understand its patterns, feel its rhythms. Only then will you master it. For the first time since their arrival on Deathworld, Talia felt a deep sense of understanding settle within her. This was no ordinary training ground. This was where they would evolve, not just as soldiers, but as something greater, something that could survive not only on Deathworld, but wherever the galaxy took them. As night fell and the jungle came alive with the sounds of unseen creatures, the cadets made camp, their minds swirling with the lessons they had learned, and the ones still to come. Sergeant Kale sat apart from them, observing, waiting. They were all about to learn something that no one, not even the most advanced alien species, could avoid, that the true enemy was never the beast that prowled the jungle, or the harsh conditions of the world they walked on. The true enemy was ignorance, and Deathworld, for all its danger, was the best teacher they would ever have. Talia lay down, staring at the stars above. She had come here to survive. Now, she was beginning to realize that she was here to evolve. All alien species learned the same lesson about Deathworld in the jungle. Cadet's journey, HFY Sci-Fi, continued. The following days were a blur of brutal lessons and grueling tests. Under the watchful eyes of Sergeant Kale, the cadets learned to blend into the jungle as seamlessly as the predators that roamed it. Every hour, every minute, was an opportunity to adapt, to rethink their strategies, and to test the limits of their endurance. The jungle itself had become both their adversary and their teacher, and it would not rest until they were ready. Talia woke early, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the thick canopy above. The humid air of the jungle was thick with the scent of decay and life, a pungent reminder that the world around them was in constant motion. As her eyes adjusted to the dim light, she saw Grith and Jorith already moving, preparing for the day's test. The sergeant had been relentless, pushing them to their limits each time they thought they had learned enough. But Deathworld had a way of revealing hidden weaknesses, things they hadn't even known existed. It was no longer just about fighting or surviving. It was about learning how to live within this deadly ecosystem. You ready? Grith asked, his deep voice a steady rumble as he glanced over at her. His usual stoic demeanor had been tempered over the past few days with a growing understanding of their shared purpose. Talia nodded, wiping the sleep from her eyes. Ready as I'll ever be. Jorith, as always, was calm, though there was a sharpened intensity in his eyes that hadn't been there before. The question isn't whether we're ready, he said, his voice low and thoughtful. The question is, what does readiness even mean in a place like this? Talia thought about it for a moment. What did readiness mean? Could they ever truly be ready for Deathworld? Or was survival itself the measure of their success? Before she could voice her thoughts, Kale's voice boomed through the jungle, his tone clipped and commanding. Cadets, formation, we move now. With practiced efficiency, they gathered their equipment and fell into line behind the sergeant. The jungle stretched ahead, a living labyrinth filled with unseen dangers. The trees rose like ancient monoliths, their massive roots sprawling like veins beneath the earth. The air was thick with the sounds of creatures, some too far to see, others close enough that Talia could feel the weight of their presence. They moved in silence, the cadets focusing on their surroundings, each step deliberate. The jungle was alive, watching, Waiting, Kale led them down a narrow path, one that seemed to vanish into the thick of the jungle. Talia felt the familiar tension in her chest as they ventured deeper into the wilderness. Hours passed before Kale finally spoke, his voice low and serious. We're entering the most dangerous part of the jungle. This is the Vale, a territory controlled by the Vornak. They are a species that has mastered ambush tactics and stealth. The only way through is to become them. Talia felt a shiver run down her spine. The Vornak were notorious for their cunning and ability to blend into their environment. They could disappear in plain sight, making them one of the most deadly predators on Deathworld. This was no longer a test of endurance or strength. This was a test of their ability to think like the creatures they feared most. Survival is no longer just about resisting danger, Kale continued, his voice colder now. It's about becoming a part of it. If you cannot move like a predator, you will become prey. Today, you will learn what it means to be invisible. They spent the next several hours in utter silence, moving through the dense foliage with an eerie quiet. Kale led them through a series of exercises, teaching them how to use their environment to mask their presence. They crawled through thick mud, learned to disappear beneath heavy vines, and practiced blending with the shadows. The jungle itself seemed to shift around them, reacting to their every movement. Talia found herself moving with more fluidity, more precision, as she adjusted to the jungle's rhythm. She remembered Kale's earlier words, adaptation is key. She felt the jungle's heartbeat in her chest, a constant reminder that she was no longer an outsider here. Slowly, but surely, she was becoming a part of this brutal world. Cadets, Kale's voice broke the silence again, sharp and commanding. Stay alert. Talia's instincts flared immediately. She wasn't sure why, but something felt wrong. The atmosphere had shifted, and her skin prickled with a sudden, unfamiliar tension. Kale's eyes locked onto the shadows ahead, his expression unreadable. Before she could react, a low hiss split the air, followed by a blur of movement. The Vornak had arrived. They moved with terrifying precision, appearing out of the underbrush like specters. Their bodies were covered in chitinous armor that blended seamlessly with the jungle, and their eyes gleamed with a deadly intelligence. Talia's heart raced as one of the Vornak charged at her, its sleek form moving like liquid through the trees. But she was ready. In a split second, she ducked and rolled to the side, her hands brushing the ground for purchase as she let the Vornak's momentum carry it past her. She wasn't fighting it, she was moving with it. Her body flowed like water through the jungle, adjusting to the rhythms of the predators around her. Grith was already in motion, using his forearms to swing from tree branches, staying above the Vornak's line of sight. Jorith, ever the agile one, melted into the shadows, his lithe form barely visible as he stalked the Vornak from behind. Together, they became a part of the jungle, invisible and deadly. Sergeant Kale's voice was steady. Don't fight them, become them. Only by understanding them can you survive them. The Vornak seemed to hesitate for a brief moment, as if sensing something had changed. They were used to outwitting their prey, but these cadets, these strange, diverse beings, were not like anything they had encountered before. Talia could feel it. She could feel the jungle shifting around them, guiding her movements. With every breath, every calculated step, she became more attuned to the deadly forces that surrounded them. The Vornak were no longer just predators. They were part of the ecosystem, a challenge to be understood and survived. The battle raged on for hours, a silent, tense dance between hunter and hunted, but as the sun began to set, the Vornak slowly retreated, realizing that their ambush had failed. The cadets had passed the test, not through strength or force, but by adapting to the environment and becoming one with the jungle itself. Exhausted but victorious, they regrouped, their eyes meeting Kale's in silent acknowledgement. The sergeant nodded once, his approval clear. You've done well. This jungle does not forgive mistakes, but it rewards those who learn. You have learned something important today. The jungle will always be here, and you will always need to adapt. As the cadets made camp that night, the jungle around them seemed quieter, as if it, too, was acknowledging their success. Talia lay on her back, staring at the stars once more. She had learned the most important lesson of all, that survival wasn't just about strength. It was about becoming part of the world, no matter how deadly, no matter how alien. It was about adapting, surviving, and ultimately thriving in the face of impossible odds. Tomorrow, they would face more challenges, but for now, They had earned the right to rest. And Deathworld? It had learned a lesson, too. These cadets were not just survivors. They were the next evolution of beings who could live, thrive, and adapt anywhere, even here. All alien species learned the same lesson about Deathworld in the jungle. Cadets' journey, HFY, Sci-Fi, continued. The days that followed blurred into a relentless sequence of trials, each one more demanding than the last. Deathworld's jungle, though beautiful in its own twisted way, was unforgiving, and every moment was a reminder that survival was not a given. The cadets were pushed to their absolute limits, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Yet, with each challenge, they grew stronger, learning more about themselves and the jungle that would shape them. Sergeant Kale led them through a series of increasingly difficult survival exercises. Some were simple, like tracking and hunting small creatures, while others were far more complex. The cadets had to cross treacherous ravines, navigate through swamps filled with venomous snakes, and avoid plants that could poison or incapacitate them with a single touch. They were forced to adapt to an environment that didn't care about their species, their strength, or their technology. The jungle had only one rule: adapt, or perish. Talia had learned to move with the jungle's flow, blending into its rhythms, and using its natural defenses as her own. She had learned the hard way that when Deathworld presented a challenge, there were no easy solutions, only the need to think beyond the obvious. One evening, while they were camped by a river, she'd noticed that the night air felt different. It was still, the usual symphony of insects silent. "Something's off," she murmured, her eyes scanning the surrounding jungle. Grith, ever alert, nodded. "The air's too still. No creatures, no movement, not normal." Jorith, ever perceptive, raised his antennae. "We're not alone. We've triggered something." Sergeant Kale, who had been sitting apart, his back to a massive tree, turned slowly. "Stay sharp. Deathworld has a way of testing even the most prepared." The moment he finished speaking, the ground beneath them trembled, and the bushes rustled. Out of the shadows, a massive creature emerged, a Vornak. But unlike the ones they had fought before, this one was larger, its chitinous armor gleaming like black obsidian. Its claws were sharp enough to tear through metal, and its eyes glowed with an eerie green light. It was an alpha, the apex predator of the Vornak species. The jungle had been waiting for them to reach this point. "Cadets, this is your real test," Sergeant Kale said, his voice calm, though his eyes were focused. "Alert. Fight with everything you have. Don't just survive, win." Talia felt a surge of adrenaline. They had been training for this moment, though she never imagined the test would come this quickly. The Vornak Alpha let out a deafening screech, its claws scraping against the rock as it charged toward them. Without hesitation, Grith sprang into action, his 4 powerful arms swinging in perfect unison, launching him toward the creature. His strength was a force to be reckoned with, and his attack was timed perfectly. But the Vornak was fast. It twisted mid-strike, its claws slashing through the air, narrowly missing the Krolnian. Jorith's movements were a blur, his sleek body darting in and out of the shadows, his eyes locked on the creature's every move. He was small, but his agility was unmatched. He fired quick bursts from his blaster, aiming for the Vornak's joints, hoping to weaken its mobility. Talia, standing with her blaster aimed, was calculating the creature's next move. She noticed the subtle flex of its muscles and the twitch of its eyes, signs of an imminent attack. Without thinking, she shifted her weight and fired a shot aimed directly at its vulnerable underbelly. The Vornak screeched in pain, but it wasn't enough to stop it. It was enraged now, faster and more dangerous. The battle was chaotic, but their training had prepared them for moments like this. Grith and Jorith worked in tandem, distracting the creature, while Talia provided cover. They worked together like a well-oiled machine, their movements so coordinated that they appeared to anticipate each other's actions. For a brief moment, Talia found herself in sync with the jungle, feeling the vibrations of the creature's movements before they happened. She knew when to duck, when to jump, and when to strike. The jungle's rhythm became her rhythm. She was no longer fighting the Vornak Alpha alone. They were one, the predator and its prey, and she was the hunter. With a roar, Grith managed to land a crushing blow to the Vornak's side, staggering it. Jorith darted forward, leaping onto the creature's back and using his agility to deliver a series of well-placed strikes. Talia saw her chance. She aimed her blaster at the exposed area beneath the Vornak's armored neck and fired. The blast hit with a loud crack, and the creature crumpled to the ground in a heap, twitching in its death throes. The cadets stood, breathing heavily, their bodies bruised and bloodied, but victorious. They had done it. Sergeant Kale stepped forward, his many eyes scanning the fallen creature. You did well. The Vornak Alpha is no easy kill. But you adapted. You used what you had. And you learned when to strike and when to retreat. You've proven yourselves, cadets. Talia wiped the sweat from her brow and looked at her companions. Grith was breathing heavily, but his face showed no signs of fatigue, only quiet satisfaction. Jorith, though exhausted, had a calm smile on his face. And Talia, she realized she was smiling too. A smile that came from a place of pride and understanding. They had become a unit, a team that could survive anything, and they had done so by adapting to the jungle, to the world around them, and to each other. But Sergeant Kale wasn't done. You've won this battle, but the real challenge is still ahead. Deathworld does not give up its secrets easily. Every victory here comes with a price. Tomorrow, we move on. Your real training is only beginning. The cadets exchanged glances. They had survived the Vornak Alpha, but the jungle had no intention of letting them rest. It was always changing, always evolving, just as they were. Talia could feel it. The next challenge was already waiting, lurking in the shadows. As they made camp for the night, Talia lay awake, staring at the stars above. The jungle seemed quieter now, as if it, too, was resting. She thought of the lessons she had learned and the ones still to come. Survival was no longer just about overcoming the challenges in front of them. It was about learning to live with them, to evolve alongside them. Tomorrow, they would face something new, something different, but for tonight, they could rest, knowing they had become something more than they had ever imagined. Tomorrow, Deathworld would test them again. And they would be ready. All alien species learned the same lesson about Deathworld in the jungle. Cadet's Journey, HFY Sci-Fi, continued. The air was thick with the oppressive weight of the jungle as the cadets made camp near the fallen Shatter Beast. Their bodies ached, bruised from their battle, and the unrelenting humidity clung to their skin like a constant reminder of the world they were in. But in the silence that followed, there was a sense of accomplishment. They had survived. They had defeated the Shatter Beast. And in doing so, they had proven that, no matter how brutal, Deathworld could be conquered, but only through adaptability, teamwork, and constant learning. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the jungle floor, Kale gathered the cadets around the fire. His many eyes glimmered in the fading light, his expression unreadable. You did well today, Kale began, his voice heavy with both praise and a touch of something else. The Shatter Beast is no trivial opponent, but this victory is not the end. In fact, it's just the beginning. The cadets exchanged glances. They had faced down one of Deathworld's most dangerous creatures, and yet, Kale's words suggested they were nowhere near the end of their journey. The next trial will be harder, Kale continued, his tone serious. You have learned how to fight, how to adapt to the environment, and how to work as a team. But Deathworld does not let you rest. It does not forgive complacency. Talia's heart raced at the thought of what lay ahead. The idea of something more challenging than the Shatter Beast seemed almost impossible. But if there was one thing she had learned, it was that nothing was beyond them. The jungle had pushed them to their limits, but they had pushed back, using every ounce of strength, every scrap of knowledge they had gained. Grith, who had been silent for most of the night, finally spoke. What do you mean by the next trial, Sergeant? What are we facing? Kale's eyes narrowed as he looked into the distance, as if contemplating something beyond the firelight. The true test is not one of strength or combat. It is a test of survival, in every sense of the word. Tomorrow, we enter the most dangerous part of Deathworld. It is known as the Waking Maw. The air around them seemed to grow even heavier at Kale's words. Talia couldn't suppress the shiver that ran down her spine. The Waking Maw was something the older cadets whispered about. Something almost mythical, a part of the jungle where the rules of survival seemed to break down. It was said that creatures there were born of nightmares, where the jungle itself was alive in ways that defied reason. What is the Waking Maw? Jorith asked, his voice steady, though Talia could hear the edge of concern beneath it. Kale looked at them all, his expression solemn. It is a place where the jungle shifts its nature. It becomes a living entity, And every creature, every plant, is a threat. The very ground beneath you is unstable, shifting as though it has a mind of its own. You must traverse it to prove that you are worthy to leave this place. You will face the ultimate test of adaptation. Talia's stomach twisted. The very ground shifting? Creatures that could be born of nightmares? She had thought the Shatter Beast was the peak of their trials, but now she realized that the true challenge was not the creatures they faced, but the environment itself, the jungle, in all its terrible and unpredictable glory. "We'll face it together," Grith said, his deep voice full of resolve. "We've made it this far. Nothing's going to stop us now." Jorith nodded. "We've survived the worst. Whatever comes next, we'll face it as a team." Kale's expression softened ever so slightly. "That's the spirit. But remember, in the waking maw, you will not only be tested by what you can see, but by what you can't. Trust your instincts. Trust each other." The cadets sat in silence around the fire, the weight of Kale's words settling on them. The jungle, Deathworld, was no mere battlefield. It was alive. It was watching, waiting, and tomorrow, they would face its darkest corner. As the fire crackled and the night stretched on, Talia couldn't help but reflect on everything they had endured so far. From the first trial in the jungle to the battle with the Vornak Alpha, they had been pushed to their limits, but they had risen to the challenge each time. What did the waking maw hold in store for them? What kind of trials awaited in a place that twisted reality itself? As the stars twinkled overhead, Talia felt the weight of her thoughts. She had come so far, learned so much, and yet, there was still so much she didn't know. One thing was certain, though, she wasn't the same person who had arrived on Deathworld a few weeks ago. She was stronger, sharper, more attuned to the jungle's rhythm. The jungle had become a part of her, and she had become a part of it. "Tomorrow," Kale said, his voice breaking through the quiet, "we begin the final leg of this journey. Prepare yourselves. This is your last test." With those words, the cadets stood, gathering their gear and making their way into the dense jungle, their minds focused on what was to come. They had faced impossible odds, fought terrifying creatures, and adapted to an environment that wanted nothing more than to destroy them. But as they moved forward into the night, Talia felt an undeniable sense of purpose. She was ready. They were ready. They would face the waking maw and survive. And Deathworld would learn the same lesson all other species had learned. Humans, and their allies, could never be underestimated. The next day, the air had changed. The jungle that had seemed familiar was now a stranger, as if something had shifted overnight. The path ahead was nearly impossible to see, obscured by fog and shifting shadows. The temperature had dropped, and the ground was softer, almost spongy, as though it were alive, breathing with each step they took. "Stay close," Kale's voice rang out from the front, steady but tense. "Trust nothing you see, nothing you hear. It's all part of the test." The ground beneath their feet began to tremble, a faint vibration that seemed to pulse from deep within the earth. Talia looked around, but she couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. Still, she felt it, something was watching them, something was waiting. And then, the ground cracked. A massive fissure tore open at their feet, sending a cloud of dust and debris into the air. The cadets leapt back, but not quickly enough. A massive vine, as thick as a tree trunk, shot up from the crack, wrapping around Grith's body, pulling him toward the abyss. "Grith!" Talia shouted, instinctively reaching for her blaster. The Krolnian roared, his four arms struggling against the powerful vine, but it was too strong. It was dragging him into the chasm, deeper into the earth's twisted maw. Without thinking, Talia rushed forward, grabbing a nearby branch and using it as leverage to help Grith. Jorith, ever quick, darted in from the side, slashing at the vine with his blade. The ground continued to rumble as if the jungle itself were alive and angry. The vines around Grith tightened, pulling him into the darkness. "Together," Kale shouted, and the cadets worked as one. Talia aimed her blaster, firing at the vine just above Grith's head. The shot hit its mark, and with a loud snap, the vine released its hold. Grith fell back onto solid ground. Gasping for air, the vine recoiled into the earth, disappearing into the depths. Talia, her heart pounding, knelt beside Grith. "Are you okay?" He nodded, though his massive body was shaking with the intensity of the close call. "Never been so glad to be back on solid ground." Kale's voice cut through the tension. The waking maw has begun. This is only the beginning. Stay sharp, cadets. This place is alive, and if you're not careful, it will consume you. All alien species learned the same lesson about Deathworld in the jungle. Cadets' journey, HFY Sci-Fi, continued. The ground under their feet continued to tremble, and the ominous rumbling of the jungle only grew louder as the cadets advanced deeper into the waking maw. The air felt thick, almost charged with an invisible current that made the hairs on the back of Talia's neck stand on end. The jungle, once a hostile but familiar environment, had become something else entirely. It was as if the very earth beneath them had become a living organism, its heartbeat syncing with the vibrations that now rattled their bones. Every step was a calculated risk, each one closer to something darker, something more unpredictable. Kale led the way with deliberate steps, his multiple eyes scanning the terrain as if seeking something hidden. Behind him, the cadets remained tight, their movements fluid, and their senses on high alert. Every sound, every shift in the air was a potential threat. Stay close. Kale's voice was firm. And remember, this place thinks. It will test your worst fears, make you question everything you know. You'll feel as though it's your mind that's the enemy, not the jungle itself. Talia's thoughts were drawn back to the rumble they had just experienced, and Grith's near ensnarement by that vine. She hadn't seen it coming. The vine had just erupted from the earth, seeming to grow from the ground itself. It was an unnatural act, like the jungle had made a choice to attack, to consume. Let's keep moving, Talia murmured, trying to shake off the unsettling thoughts as she adjusted her pack. She could feel the weight of the atmosphere pressing in on them, as if every tree, every vine, was watching them. Grith was still recovering, though he had recovered quickly after the vine's assault. The massive Krolnian's skin was darker, his expression more intense, and his large arms twitched slightly, as though testing their strength against the grip of the jungle itself. He looked at Talia and nodded, his confidence slowly returning. This place is like a predator, Grith rumbled softly. We're the prey, and the jungle's hunting us. That's exactly what Kale meant, Talia whispered back. She wasn't wrong. The waking maw wasn't a mere location. It was a state of mind, a kind of sentient battlefield. There was no survival without a total understanding of the enemy, and the enemy was now the environment itself. Kale's voice cut through the quiet. We're entering the heart of it now. Be on alert. As if to punctuate his warning, a loud crack echoed from the trees ahead. Without warning, the ground beneath them suddenly split open, sending jagged rocks tumbling into the newly formed chasm. Talia's heart skipped a beat. This time, the ground was pulling apart as if intentionally, part of the jungle's inherent strategy. The cadets instinctively backed away, each ready to react to the unexpected shift. The earth felt as though it were breathing, the cracks widening slowly, deliberately. We need to cross, Kale ordered, his voice steely. The path ahead is through the ravine. Stay close, move fast, do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Talia swallowed hard. The ravine before them was wide, easily spanning several meters across. The bottom of the ravine was obscured by thick vines that hung down like rotting curtains. There was no visible way to cross, no bridges, no ledges, just an open, yawning chasm. Can't we just go around? Jorith asked, his antennae twitching nervously. Kale turned his gaze to the horizon, the air around him still vibrating with an almost unnatural hum. There is no around, there is only through. Deathworld does not offer you alternatives. The cadets exchanged uneasy looks, but they all knew there was no choice. They had come this far, and turning back was not an option. The group made their way cautiously to the edge of the ravine. As they approached, the air grew colder, the tension thicker. The ground beneath them seemed to pulse in a rhythmic, almost hypnotic manner. Talia took a deep breath, steadying herself. Then, the first attack came. From within the jungle's depths, something large and fast erupted from the darkness, a swarm of pale, spidery creatures, their bodies elongated and segmented. Their many legs moved in a blur, faster than the cadets could react. The creatures were the size of large dogs, their translucent skin barely visible in the dim light. They moved with terrifying speed, and their pincers clicked together ominously. Talia didn't hesitate. Her blaster was already drawn, her finger pulling the trigger before she even consciously processed it. The energy blast hit one of the creatures square in the chest, vaporizing its fragile exoskeleton in an instant. But the others were undeterred, undaunted by the loss. More of them, Grith shouted, his massive arms swinging as he batted at one of the creatures, knocking it away with a powerful swipe. But the attack only seemed to anger the swarm, and more of the creatures poured from the darkness of the ravine. The air was filled with their screeches, a sharp, dissonant noise that made Talia's teeth grind. Kale raised his hand. Form a perimeter, don't let them surround you. They moved into formation, covering each other's blind spots. Jorith was a blur, darting in and out of the creature's reach, using his agility to keep the swarm at bay. Grith smashed through the ranks of the spidery beasts, his massive form a living battering ram. Talia, aiming from behind a large tree, took shots at the creatures' heads, trying to down as many as she could before they overran their position. It was chaos, but it was organized chaos, the kind born from the hours of training they had endured. Every shot, every movement, every action had a purpose. They were fighting to survive. Talia's heart pounded in her chest as she fired again, another creature collapsing under the force of her shot. But just as she turned to check her position, a massive shadow lunged from the depths of the ravine. The source of the creatures had arrived. It was a creature like none they had seen before. It was massive, its body as long as a tree, with multiple sets of legs extending from its segmented torso. Its head was round and almost bloated, with glowing eyes that burned like embers. Its mandibles clicked together as it screeched, a sound that seemed to rattle their very bones. "Fall back," Kale commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We can't fight this thing here. Fall back to higher ground, now." Without waiting for further instruction, the cadets began to retreat, pushing through the swarm, which had now formed a solid wall of writhing bodies. The massive creature began to charge, its multiple legs churning the earth as it barreled toward them. It was fast, and it was angry. Talia's mind raced. There was no time to think. They had to move. Grith made the first move, grabbing a fallen branch and using it to swing himself up onto a high ledge. Jorith followed, his nimble body darting up the rocks with ease. Talia and Kale were right behind them, both scrambling up the jagged cliffside, their hands finding purchase on the rocky outcrop. The creature was right on their heels, its jaws snapping as it charged toward them. Talia pushed harder, feeling the strain in her arms as she climbed, her eyes locked on the edge of the cliff above. With a final, desperate effort, Talia reached the top, hauling herself over the lip of the ravine and rolling to safety. She heard the thundering steps of the creature behind her, but it had stopped just short of the climb, unable to reach them on the narrow ledge. Panting heavily, Talia sat up, glancing down at the swarm of creatures below. The massive creature screeched in frustration, its claws scraping against the rocky surface as it attempted to follow. But it was useless. They had escaped. For now.